Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakester, welcome to Extra Crispy, man. For today's video, we got a video about Hoops Reference, the most underrated player on every NBA team. So the other day, we checked out the most overrated player, and by the way, link to Hoops Reference's channel in the description below. But we got underrated, starting with the Eastern Conference, Detroit Pistons. It's gotta be... okay, the face is because I can't think of who because there's so many, okay? It's not because they're all overrated, okay, man? No, I would say Cade's kind of underrated, but, you know, he's been injured and stuff, so I'll give him that pass right there. Killian's a little underrated because everybody hates him. And I probably got to go with Duren, though. You know, the fact that James Wiseman is starting over Duren, it just don't make sense to me. It really doesn't make sense. But let's start this video and see what Hoops has to say.
In my last two videos, I went through every NBA team, identifying the player on each roster.
Who do you guys, before we get into, who do you guys think is the most underrated player on your favorite NBA team? Let me know in the comment section below.
I believed was the most overrated in the eyes of fans and media alike, so for my next two videos, I'm going to be doing something similar. The difference, though, is that we're now going to the opposite end of the spectrum by going through each team identifying their most underrated players.
Yeah, what does
These are the
underrated
players
mean?
who are helpful, productive, and impactful in their team's rotations, but don't quite get the level of respect that they deserve for it.
Yeah, that's underrated.
In this video, we'll be going through the teams in the Eastern Conference, and then in tomorrow's video, we'll be
like the
finishing
same
up
shorts
the
as
list
the
by
Cavs.
going through the teams in the Western Conference, so stay tuned for that as well. Before we start, though, it turns out a good amount of you who are watching aren't subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting
Hit the subscribe button, man. Hit the subscribe button.
A ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now, with that being said,
Man trying to
let's
eat.
begin. We'll be going in alphabetical
Okongwu.
order,
I love
so to
Okongwu.
start off, we have the Atlanta Hawks, and their most
Good choice.
underrated player right now is Onyeka Okongwu. The Hawks have had a relatively disappointing season.
Get rid of
as a
Clint.
whole
It's
for
time.
a variety of reasons, and they haven't taken the leap defensively that they were hoping to take after their offseason, but at the very least, they are much better in that regard when Okongwu is anchoring the defense.
That's Bam Adebayo.
He's still coming off the bench backing up Clint Capella, but the team actually performs 4 points better when Okongwu is on the court and may need to start to have a bigger role moving forward because his versatility on defense is becoming integral to their success. Next up is the Boston Celtics, and their most underrated player is Al Horford. Horford had a few down seasons, and the majority of the basketball world started to assume that his days impacting the game at a high level were over, but this season, he has been outstanding, even if his box score production doesn't jump off the page at you.
He's that glue guy.
Horford is back anchoring a top 5 ranked Boston defense. He's playing his role without trying to do too much, and he's shooting the ball better than he ever has, knocking down 45% of his threes. Up next, we have the Brooklyn Nets, and their most underrated player is Mikal Bridges. Bridges had...
Do you guys think Mikal Bridges is like superstar #1 option material, or do you see them needing to like add some more pieces to ever be a championship team?
Been pretty underrated since his time in Phoenix when he was used more in a role of a 3-and-D wing player, but ever since he got traded to Brooklyn, he has stepped into the role of being the team's #1 option on offense, and has taken off. In the 20 games that he has played as a member of the Nets, he is averaging about 27 points, shooting the ball 50% from the field and 41% from 3. So he very well may be a legitimate star in the making. Next up is the Charlotte Hornets, and their most underrated player is Mark Williams. I
don't know what's up with the Hornets. It seems like they have like some solid centers on their team, but then for a while there they had Mason Plumlee going, although they did trade him away. But yeah, they got Mark Williams. They got don't they got JT Thor? Kai Jones, I think, but yeah, they still need like Victor Wembanyama. Mark Williams is cool though.
Talented rookies emerging from this
traditional
most recent draft class, but Williams hasn't quite gotten the recognition that others have, despite showing off very promising potential. He struggled a bit with injuries this season, but when he's been on the court, his size and defensive instincts have been on display as a rim protector. He's established a good rapport with LaMelo Ball in the pick and roll, and he finishes well inside.
Yeah, he gives me Clint Capella vibes.
Starting center in the making. Up next is the Chicago Bulls, and their most underrated player is Alex Caruso. Caruso is another role player who may not have his numbers jump off the page at anybody, but his impact goes beyond the box score. He's an outstanding defender whose hustle is vital to a Bulls team that lacks good defensive output overall. He gives you a little bit of everything offensively without trying to do too much, and the Bulls perform over 7 points better with him on the court for a reason compared to when he's on the bench. Next up is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and their most underrated player is Darius Garland. When discussing the success of the Cavaliers,
I was going to say about Darius.
A lot of the talk tends to center around the arrival of Donovan Mitchell, along with their stout defense being led by Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen in the front court. But Garland has been a vital playmaker for the 4th place team in the East. He didn't make the All-Star team this year, but he's putting up about 22 points and 8 assists a night. He's turning it over less.
He's just a top 10 point guard for the next 15 years.
Very efficiently, shooting 47% from the field and 41% from 3.
15.
Next up is the Detroit Pistons. Their most underrated player is Jalen Duren. Duren is another rookie center that has incredible upside on display, but again is in a situation where very few people are taking note of it. Unfortunately, the Pistons have a pretty crowded front court and just added James Wiseman to throw into the bunch, but Duren is probably the best defensive player of the group.
Duren needs to be the starting center. If we get Victor Wembanyama, he goes at the 4 spot. If we don't get Victor, then I don't know. I mean, I don't know what pick we're going to end up getting, but front court wise, you know, Marvin Bagley is, the way I look at it is the rest of the season, which isn't too long, I think that you really got to play, you know, Bagley to the sense, and even Wiseman to the sense that you're trying to maybe increase their trade value or something, but Duren needs to be the starting center. Okay, I understand he's 19 and stuff, so maybe, like, it's not going to be a long, you know, or maybe it's going to take a little while, but he needs to be the starting center. Like, there's just no question about it. Don't take the man off. Like, treat him, like, with respect and everything, and just give him the reins at that center position. They need to do it.
And he's a tremendous athlete that runs the floor well, finishes strong inside, and has the length to hold his own with any matchup. Up next, we have the Indiana Pacers, and their most underrated player is Miles Turner. Turner used to be a player that was labeled as a guy with potential all-star ceiling, but his offensive game never quite developed to that point. He's also been on the trade block seemingly every year for the last 5 years, and now that he's on a tanking Indiana team, he's been forgotten about by many. But despite not quite living up to the hype, he's still a fantastic
they just need a little time, they'll be good.
Now an underrated offensive big man. He's scoring a career-high 18 points this year, he capably spaces the floor out to the 3-point line, and he's amongst the league leaders in blocks yet again. Next up is the Miami Heat, and their most underrated player is Bam Adebayo.
What about
Bam
Duncan Robinson?
Adebayo might legitimately be the best defensive player in the NBA, but he not only has yet to win a Defensive Player of the Year award, but he also hasn't even been a finalist for the award yet, and to top it off, he was only named 2nd team All-Defense last year. The Heat's biggest weakness this season is their front court depth, as Bam has almost had to hold it down single-handedly there, and all things considered, he's done a pretty good job. Next up is the Milwaukee Bucks,
Brook
and
Lopez,
their most underrated player is Brook Lopez.
Like a fine wine,
the Bucks are
better.
Obviously led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is an outstanding two-way force and rightfully gets credited for his contributions on both ends. But Brook Lopez is probably the team's most impactful defender and is my personal choice to win this year's Defensive Player of the Year award. Brook has become one of the smartest, most disciplined defenders in the entire NBA.
That's like a perfect way to describe Brook Lopez. Smart. Like, this dude is smart. This man's adaptable. Like, this dude just knows how to switch his game to optimize whatever team he's on. And I love that. Like, that's how you prolong your career in anything. You got to be able to adapt.
And him making life hell for opponents trying to score in the paint is a big reason why the Bucks are the 2nd-ranked defense this year. Up next, we have the New York Knicks, and their most underrated player is Emmanuel Quickley. The Knicks have been a lot better than anybody anticipated this season, and with the addition of Jalen Brunson, who has broken out in a big way, he's gotten a lot of the credit, and rightfully so. But they've also switched up some of their rotations to get Quickley more involved, and as the season has gone on,
y'all think RJ Barrett's going to be there next season?
Sensational basketball. In the last 20 games, he's been scoring about 20 points, with a 40-point game and a 38-point game thrown into that mix, and he electrifies the Knicks offense as a spark plug off the bench in their 6th man role. Next up, we have the
Markelle Fultz. I believe in Markelle Fultz, always.
Player is Markelle Fultz.
Love Markelle Fultz.
Fultz has been one of the most peculiar cases of a player becoming a draft bust because after going #1 overall, he suffered shoulder injuries that messed up his shot, and after the Sixers gave up on him by shipping him to Orlando, he's been out of the spotlight for a while. But this year, he's putting together a pretty solid season.
Yeah, he's
across
healthy.
The board,
Fundamentals are down.
Without a consistent 3-ball in his arsenal. He's incredibly shifty with the ball in his hands. He has such amazing touch around the rim and finishes inside, and his ability to penetrate.
I'll take him in Detroit. Six-man probably,
but pretty good playmaker, all things considered, and he's continually getting better and better. Next up is the Philadelphia 76ers, and their most underrated player is James Harden. Last season, Harden was looking a step slower than usual, and the narrative became that Harden was washed and over the hill. This season, Harden has not only bounced back in a big way, but he's having the best playmaking season of his career, leading the league in assists, while also shooting the ball as efficiently as he ever has.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, this is still Houston Rockets James Harden. It's just he's playing more team-oriented basketball now because he has the talent around him to do so. And that's why we're seeing it where it's like, with that playmaking, it opens up so more for him individually, having Joel Embiid out there, man, taking the double teams and everything. It's just, it makes sense why Harden's shooting this way too, because it's like you can't really double team him. So I love it. I love his ability to just like expand his game by getting others involved is huge.
Not even named an all-star. Up next, we have the
Pascal,
Toronto Raptors,
100%.
and their most underrated player is Pascal Siakam.
Maybe the most underrated.
The Raptors have had a weird season where at one point they looked completely out of the hunt, and as the trade deadline approached, everyone assumed that they were going to blow it up, but they kept the gang together, they've rallied pretty hard, and now look like they've got a good chance to sneak into the playoffs, and Siakam's consistency en route to his best season as a pro is a...
I have no idea why, like, championship contender teams, especially around the trade deadline, weren't going like heavily for Pascal, because we've literally seen him be that second option on a championship team to Kawhi Leonard, and you know he's playing #1 option ball right now. I don't think he's a #1 option on a championship team, but man, like we know we can do it as like a second, kind of like a 2A 2B thing, because they also had Kyle Lowry at the time, so.
A big reason
but
why.
Y'all know what I'm saying.
Siakam is one of the most slept-on stars.
Would have loved him on
right
like
now,
the
but
Heat.
He's super solid on both sides
Maybe
of the
the
ball,
Suns.
and if the Raptors make the playoffs, he could force them to make some noise. And finally, the last team in the East is the Washington Wizards, and their most underrated player is Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis is scoring more points than he ever has in his career this year, he's shooting the ball more efficiently than he ever has in his career, and he honestly just looks a lot more confident than he ever has in his career. But
yeah, hopefully it's not some fool's gold, just because, like, you know, being a 7'3" player with some lower body injury history, if they throw him that bag, they could be, it could be a bad situation, but right now he's playing great basketball. All right, let's, we got the Western Conference now. Western Conference.
Begin. Going in alphabetical order, we'll start off with the Dallas Mavericks, and their most underrated player is Jaden Hardy. Hardy might be the biggest steal of the draft last year, and he's been a bit of a hidden gem after being picked in the second round, because he hasn't gotten the opportunity to consistently show what he's capable of, but since the trade deadline, he's been getting more incorporated into the team's rotation and has been an exciting spark off of the bench for the offense. In his last 11 games, he's averaging about 16 points on very efficient shooting splits, including 6 games in that span with 20 or more points in them. Next up is...
Serious question, especially if you're a Mavericks fan. If you knew Hardy was going to end up playing this good, would you have still wanted Kyrie Irving? Because I feel like the way Hardy plays, it's perfect for Luka to be the ball-dominant dude. And then obviously they still would have had all their, you know, defensive players.
The Denver Nuggets, and their most underrated player is Aaron Gordon. The work Aaron Gordon does for this team, specifically defensively, flies pretty
smart.
Under the radar. Offensively, he benefits greatly from the playmaking talent of Nikola Jokic, but defensively, he's the one helping out Jokic hold down the interior with solid rotational awareness, versatile switchability, and the ability to guard multiple positions, which is needed in a lineup with quite a few defensively weak players. Up next, we have the Golden State Warriors, and their most underrated player is Dante DiVincenzo. The Warriors have had a lot of ups and downs this year in their attempt to defend their title, and a lot of it is due to the fact that they've dealt with quite a few injuries, and their depth got a bit depleted compared to last season, but DiVincenzo was an amazing addition for them and has been a perfect fit with their offense. He's a willing and able sharpshooter, knocking down about 40% of his
everybody on the
threes,
Warriors got that
and
jump shot, man.
He always plays with a ton of effort on defense and crashes the glass well for a guard too. Next up is the Houston Rockets, and their most underrated player is Alperen Şengün.
Kind of this season,
Şengün has been called Baby Jokic by some because even though he hasn't yet come close to reaching Jokic's level of dominance, he does have a very similar play style as a big man with terrific court vision and passing talent that also has a plethora of post moves at his disposal down low that he uses to effectively score in the paint. The one thing holding him back right now is his defense, because otherwise he can be an offensive juggernaut down the line. Next up is the Los Angeles Clippers, and their most underrated player is Terrence Mann. The Clippers have a fairly deep roster around Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but Terrence Mann is the jack-of-all-trades type of role player that provides vital impact in big games. He's the one that brings the energy on both sides of the floor. He operates well off the ball, spacing the floor and cutting to the basket, and he doesn't need the ball in his hands to impact games in a positive way. Up next is the Los Angeles Lakers, and their most underrated player is Austin Reeves. Reeves has been thrust into several different roles over the course of the season this year, and he's been able to thrive in pretty much all of them. Early on, he was in their sixth-man role, spotting up and taking a lot of threes. He's been needed for defensive purposes in some lineups, and lately, with the multitude of injuries the Lakers have been dealing with, he's been needed to be a go-to scoring threat some games on offense, and he responded to that by dropping 20 or more points in 3 of 4 games in that stretch. So he's looking like the kind of young player that's just going to keep getting better and better. Next up is the Memphis Grizzlies, and their most underrated player is Tyus.
I'll agree with my man who's referenced on this entire thing, but I gotta say for the Grizzlies, it's been, Tyus Jones, the man's a great backup point guard, especially, stuff going on Ja this season. It's good to have him out there. Man, I gotta give it up for Luke Kennard, man. 10 for 12 on the three-point shot, the most efficient 10 threes in NBA history, man. Luke Kennard, baby. No, wait. Actually, if you think about it, it's actually good he's not underrated, because that means that people are finally starting to recognize that. No, see, okay, that's it. No, that was actually smart thinking by Hoops Reference, okay? He knows that people are recognizing Luke Kennard now, man. Okay, Tyus Jones, great choice. I agree with that. Yes.
A lot of the talk surrounding the Grizzlies has tended to be about Ja Morant both on and off the court, or Dylan Brooks and his trash-talking shenanigans. But on the court, Tyus Jones is as good of a backup point guard as it gets. When he's needed to fill in and start games, he regularly drops 20 points, he dishes out a ton of assists, making the right reads, setting his guys up for good looks, and he's just a very fundamentally sound, smart player.
Luke made that.
Next up is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and their most underrated player is Jaden McDaniels. Anthony Edwards is the team's go-to scorer, Karl Anthony Towns is coming back from his injury, ready to provide dynamic scoring as well, and Gobert holds things down inside defensively, but McDaniels is the connecting piece in the lineup that does all the little things to help a team succeed.
Every team needs one.
And he's doing it while he also emerges as much more than just a 3-and-D wing player. He's one of the best defensive players in the whole NBA, he efficiently is starting to knock down his threes, and the rate at which his ability to create off the dribble has been improved could see him in the running for the Most Improved Player award by next season. Next up is the New Orleans Pelicans, and their most underrated player is Herb Jones. Again, Jones is another example of being a player getting outshined by the bigger names around him like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and CJ McCollum, but Herb's role defending the opposing team's best player is crucial. He's a long, quick athlete that uses his length to pester whoever he's guarding and cause havoc, and as his jumper continues to develop, he's going to be one of the better two-way wings in no time. Up next, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, and their most underrated player is Jalen.
Man, J-Dub could be the man could be the most improved player. He's kind of coming in, the ninth inning here, might be taking that award away.
Williams. The Thunder actually, funnily enough, have 2 rookies with this same name, so don't confuse the two, but the one that I'm referring to is the wing player that has really been emerging in a big way in the second half of the season,
J-Dub and J-Will, right?
Into a dominant two-way wing player that uses his strong frame and natural feel for the game to create create for himself and others on his way to dropping 20 or more points in 13 of his last 22 games. Up next is the Phoenix Suns, and their most underrated player is Josh Okogie. When the Suns traded away Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson in the deal that landed them Kevin Durant, the worry was that the team sacrificed too much of their perimeter defense for it, and Okogie has actually stepped into a bigger role after that and has plugged those holes perfectly. So even though he's not a flashy player that will get much of the focus on this star-studded team, he's been a key contributor in that regard.
Bruce Brown
Up next is the Portland Trail Blazers, and their most underrated player is Jeremy Grant. The Blazers' season finished in a way that is as disappointing as it gets, not even being able to fight for a spot in the play-in tournament, so unfortunately, that overshadowed Grant having his best season as a pro, where he scored about 21 points per game, shooting the ball more efficiently inside and out than he ever has.
Man, if the Pistons don't get Victor, I wouldn't mind taking Jeremy back in Detroit at that 4 spot. Like him at the 4, Bojan at the 3, got Cade and Ivy. Well, no, we still draft somebody, so somebody would have to be. Well, I guess you don't have to start the rookie, but
his career.
That's what we get.
Next up is the Sacramento Kings, and their most underrated player is Domantas Sabonis. When the Kings traded for Sabonis last year,
the Kings fans, playoffs, man.
For it, and
it'll be a great time.
I was one of the skeptics as well.
For y'all.
But with the Kings in second place in the West, looking like as good of an offensive team
they're
as
second place
in recent history, he's proved a lot of
second place,
and his production in terms of scoring.
Wait! I thought y'all were just making the playoffs. You might win the championship. Yo, shout out to the Kings, man.
And even passing as a big man is only being surpassed by the MVP candidates this year. Up next is the San Antonio Spurs, and their most underrated player is Devin Vassell. The Spurs are a young, rebuilding group looking to develop their next generation, and quietly leading the way for them is Devin Vassell. He was drafted in the lottery, expected to be a reliable 3-and-D talent.
Yeah, he gives me Danny Green vibes.
So much more than that in his 3rd season. He's still a very good perimeter defender, who efficiently knocks down his threes on a high volume of attempts, but he has also taken huge strides forward as a creator off the dribble, which has taken his game to another level. And finally, the last team in the West is the Utah Jazz, and their most underrated player is Walker Kessler.
AKA the reason the T-Wolves lost the trade.
A package that included a ton of draft picks, which alone would have made the trade worthwhile, but they also acquired Kessler in that trade, who is already showing signs of being capable of being a quality Rudy Gobert replacement.
Yep, the next
He's
Gobert.
amongst the league leaders in blocks already as a rookie, despite playing only 22 minutes per game. He's shooting a league-leading 72% from the field, and he's also an outstanding rebounder.
Alright guys, that is the end of the video, man. Once again, great video about hoops as always. Thank you all so much for watching, and peace out, my friends.